Hello, my quilting friends! My name is Leah Day, and it is time to assemble a cutie frame. This is a small, lightweight frame. It is very portable. You can pull it out, set it on a table, quilt in a weekend, and then collapse it down and put it away. I can easily tuck this underneath my bed or in a closet and be able to pull it out and quilt anywhere I want, anytime. And I love that. This is the most portable, lightweight frame on the market today for quilters. So I'm sure that you want to learn how to get it built so you can start quilting with the Cutie. Let's get started. So our first step is to set up our base tracks for the Cutie. You want to make sure to press that little metal button in as you slot these metal pieces together, just like so. Now we're going to place our track supports on top. These are going to hold the tracks for the Cutie, and you're going to screw these in with these M4 by 20 millimeter screws. You want to leave these just a little bit loose so that way the track supports have a little bit of wiggle room as you feed your tracks inside. So I'm going to just lightly screw these in, get them finger tight, and then we're going to feed our tracks inside. So I recommend wearing gloves for this part, and I'm wearing some old Machine Gears quilting gloves here. That helps me get a little bit of better grip on the track and protects my hands. The edges can be just a little sharp. So I just slot that through, and you see right there in the middle, that's where you can have a little bit of a struggle where you have a gap between those track supports. So just mush on it a little bit, wiggle it back and forth, it'll pop over that gap, feed it all the way through. There we go, both tracks done. Now I'll grab my Allen wrench and tighten up these screws. And I am using some tools from my Qnique Longarms just because they make this a little bit more convenient. But you have tools included with your Cutie that will work just fine too. Now we're going to grab our brackets. These are going to hold the frame together. On the front brackets, you want to slot in your bungee cord holders. Bungees are sold separately from your frame. You can find them linked up, leahday.com/cutie. All right, so these can be a little confusing to get the orientation right. Look for the little triangle of metal that is flipping up. You want that triangle of metal to be on both sides of the track. And also the track needs to be oriented so you have two holes here to the inside. So I'm going to just rotate that over. In fact, actually, it's more convenient to screw in your screws just like this to kind of have it slightly on its side. And you want these screws just finger tight. You don't want to grab a screwdriver and crank them down because we do want to square up this bracket on our frame once we get the sides in place. So I'm just going to get these screws in and get them down finger tight. Now let's talk about our back brackets. These have the Cutie logo and Grace Company logo here. And again, you've got that little triangle of metal lipping up. And remember, those triangles go to the sides of the track. So just like so, that's how those are oriented. And again, they get attached with two screws each. Just get them finger tight. So now we're going to attach our side assemblies, really starting to make our frame come together. These can be also a little bit tricky to orient the right way. You want to look at this little latch lever here, these little levers on the sides. You want to make sure those face to the inside of the frame. So on this case, this is my left-hand side. I'm going to place it right here, place those brackets on top so that the screw holes align. And again, I'm going to get my screws finger tight, and then I'm going to zoom in a little bit and show you what it looks like to get this nice and square, ready to go for tightening down all of these screws. Now we're only going to tighten up our back brackets. These are the brackets with the Cutie logo on the side. And the reason is we want more play in the front brackets whenever we adjust our tracks to make sure the carriage is rolling nicely. So we're only tightening up these back brackets. And we want to try and get this as nice and straight and square as we can. Square means a perfect right angle through this corner. So I'm pressing the bracket, that triangle of metal, firmly against the tracks. I'm also pressing this bit, which is folded down against the tracks that way. I've got two screws here. I'm pressing that firmly together too. So with all that pressed together firmly, nice right angle, I'll grab my Allen wrench and tighten down those screws. So you've got those two here on the top, And then you've got kind of, they're a little tricky to reach. They're down underneath. Use the Allen wrench that came with your Cutie to tighten those up, just like so. And if you feel like it's gotten off, maybe as you tightened it up, it did something weird, just loosen it back up again and get it right. No big deal. Now I've got my base carriage and I've grabbed an encoder bracket. You've got a single hole that's threaded on one side and then you've got 2 holes here. You're gonna line up the 2 holes and make sure that the angle of that bracket, let's see if I can go sideways, is facing downward. That way your encoder can attach. That's if you're using a stitch regulator, and it will angle downward and access your tracks. So now I'm gonna place these 2 screws. These are M5 by 8mm screws, and just screw both of these in. Okay, with our encoder bracket attached to the back, we're gonna place our bottom carriage on the frame and roll it back and forth. And this is going to be checking to make sure that all the wheels are rolling, that it's a smooth roll, you're not catching on anything, and that it's all working nicely. Now, these are very tiny little wheels, and even for the big Qnique wheels that I'm used to using, I always grab a Sharpie and I mark a little line on the wheels. And this allows me to see really easily if the wheels are rolling or if they're just standing still. And it's something that it's not like it's gonna make or break your frame or anything, but it definitely rolls a lot smoother and with fewer hiccups if all of the wheels are rolling nicely. And particularly if you're planning on putting a long arm like a Qnique 16 or a Qnique 19 on this frame, you want all of your wheels rolling really, really nicely. There we go. Now I've got a mark on those wheels. I can easily see if they're rolling or not. Place it back on the frame so that all the wheels are aligned. And now I'm just going to press. I'm going to put some pressure here on the base carriage, and then I'm looking to the side to make sure that the wheels are rolling. So take about 5 to 10 minutes to do this, rolling it back and forth, making sure all of the wheels are rolling to the front, all the wheels are rolling to the back. Once you're sure that they're all rolling nicely, that means that these side brackets have already adjusted downward to compensate for the tracks for the carriage. And it helps to put a little bit of pressure on it just to make sure you got it all right. You know, you're not getting any kind of like diagonal wiggle back and forth. You know, really put some pressure on this. And once you're sure it's looking good, then we're going to tighten up these screws here on the sides. Now, once you're sure that that's tightened down and looking nice, maybe roll it a few more times back and forth, making sure that you're happy with all of those wheels and what they're doing. Then tighten up the 2 screws here and here that are facing the inside of the frame. I'm going to use my other Allen wrench to access those. So just give those a tighten and you will be good to go. Now I've grabbed my top plate carriage. We've got another encoder bracket. And again, these brackets are for if you attach a Sure Stitch Elite or if you have a long arm and you need to attach your encoders for your long arm. In this particular case, this one would only be for a Sure Stitch Elite because this top plate carriage is only necessary whenever you're using a home sewing machine on the frame. We would take this part off whenever we decide to use a long arm on this frame. And the Cutie, just in case you're wondering, is compatible with our Qnique 15, 16, and 19 long arms. So lots of possibilities. You can also put set down off-brand long arms like the Tiara, HandiQuilter Sweet 16. Those long arms are also compatible with this frame too. So yes, you can put off-brand long arms on this frame. The only downside is that it's not compatible with any of our regulators, so you're going to still have to use the foot pedal if you're using a Babylock Tiara or a HandiQuilter set down, like a set down style long arm. You're going to have to use your foot pedal with those types of machines. Any of our Qnique long arms though, you've got a stitch regulator built in, and they are ideal for standing and quilting because they have handlebars, they have the regulator, you know, right there where you can control the speed control the power of the machine right on the handles. So there we go. Now that we've got our bracket attached, I've taken my Sharpie again and marked all of my little mini wheels here. They're so cute. And I've marked all of those with just a single little line, so that way I can easily see if the wheels are spinning. Again, we want all of the wheels spinning on our top plate carriage. So I've placed my top carriage onto the bottom carriage. You can see how this works. You've got your bottom carriage that moves side to side. And then you've got your top carriage that moves forward and back. And the combination, oh my gosh, it's just such a smooth movement on this frame. And I'm looking at my tiny little wheels and it looks like they are all rolling nicely. So no adjustment needed there. But definitely want to get a machine on this frame. That is the next step. You want to place your machine on here and go on ahead and slot in your clamps to hold your machine in place. So I've just grabbed a random older home sewing machine. It's probably not going to be the best choice for this kind of thing, but it's good for demo. So you're going to be able to see how to set up this frame for your home sewing machine. We have these little clamps. You can see I've already placed 3 of them here. You want to open it up so you have the most amount of space here between that little square base and the shaft. So that way you can slot it onto your top carriage. So there we go. Now, there are Cutie channel locks. They are there, but they are sold separately. So we do not have anything right now on this frame to lock all of this in place. And as you can see, yes, it's a little tippy. So be careful, maybe grab someone else with an extra set of helping hands to help you hold that still while you place your home sewing machine on top. You can see that was a little tippy, but it was okay. I got it in place. There we go. All right, so you want to kind of just generally center this up and then lift up on those clamps, kind of unclamp them and slide them over to lock your home sewing machine in place. And it might be a good idea to check this out, like put your home sewing machine in place before you put the clamps in, make sure it's going to fit. You know, the bigger the machine, you might not actually be able to put your clamps in place because some machines are getting so big, you know, so big on the bottom basically. And the bigger the machine, obviously, the heavier it is. So it's up to you whether you feel like it absolutely has to have all of the clamps in place. So there we go. Home sewing machine installed, ready to attach the rest of our rails. So now it's time to connect together our take-up rail. And we have our short and we have our long. Kind of want to make sure that these are oriented the same way, meaning that the elastic is coming out and the hook is going the same way on both pieces. And you can see both pieces, they're working out. So now I'm going to slide this through. And then there are 2 little set screws down in there, 2mm. Grab a 2mm Allen wrench and tighten those up. And that's going to lock that rail together and ensure those pieces don't slip back apart. We're ready to install our take-up rail, and this has to go through the arm of your machine. So I have slotted it through. Now I'm going to open that rail cap, so that slots open like that. We have these 2 little grooves here on the rail. You want that to be face down, and that's going to slot into that space. And then you just rotate that and close the door. Now, as you can see, this is even from above, you can see this is coming in at an angle. My sewing machine is resting up a lot higher. So what I want to do is unlock this little clamp and lift this rail. So it just went really suddenly because it was a little on the stiff side, but you can see I can adjust that up now and get it to the right height. So I'm looking at it, and this is right now on letter A. And I'm going to close that clamp, do the same thing on the other side. So now that I got both sides on the same height, and I can see, you know, this is actually resting a little bit high. What I want is to be able to just barely squish my fingers between that back rail and the bed of my machine. When you have the rail up really, really high, this can cause skip stitches and thread breaks. So now I'm going to drop this down. I'm going to try and drop this down equally on both sides. So unhook those and just shift them downward, working one side and then the other side. And careful that you don't get your finger in there a little bit. You don't get pinched. So there we go. I'm a little low actually, so I'm going to go back up. Let's try letter D. So I just fiddled with that back and forth until I found letter E was perfect for this particular home sewing machine and this frame. So now I'll just lock those two clamps and my back rail is locked and ready to go. Now the last rail is our front rail. In this case, we're going to hold the short one in our right hand and the long one in our left hand and slot those together just like so. You want to make sure that this little keyhole shape is on both ends and face up. So there we go. And then now again, I'll get in there and tighten up those set screws to hold those together. Now remember which side was which. So I'm slotting in this way. So these are the two screws that I need to tighten in this case. These two screws will already be tightened. So just get in there and give that screw a twist, both of them, and that will tighten that up and lock those two pieces of metal together. Now it's time to arrange and attach our front rail to the side rails. And I admit this was the one thing I found very confusing, and I did it wrong once. So just understand you can always do it again. So here we go. We want this to be face down. So right side face down means that the keyhole is face up. So right here on the end, you can see a keyhole opening. On the other side, we have just a regular circle. So we want keyhole face up, and we also want the clamps, the opening for the clamp to be towards the inside, the hook for the clamp to be curling this way. So make sure that your rail is oriented the right way first. Now for the sides, we have writing on one side, we have keyhole type openings on both sides. So I like the writing to be face down. Now for what holds it together, on the bottom, we're going to grab the plastic corner piece that does not have anything in addition to those two corner areas. The top of that is going to have the keyhole, the little extra wings in the plastic on both sides. So I'm going to first place the front rail and the side rails into that bottom, place the top, or technically the bottom, on top, and then we screw it in with 3 screws. So I hope you can see we are assembling this upside down, then we'll flip it to install it into the frame. We'll do a close-up on this. You can see the clamp is coming through and the hook is going this way. The slot is pointing to the inside, what will be the inside of the frame. Keyhole face up. On the side clamp, I've got my numbers face down. Now we have our piece of plastic, our corner bracket. This does not have any extra wings on those 2 spots. I'm going to place my front and my side right inside, and then I'm going to top it with a corner bracket that does have the extra wings here and here. And that is going to fit through those little keyhole slots. Install your screws, tighten it down. We're ready to install this into our frame. In order to insert our front rail successfully, this opening and this opening, where our side rail is going to fit, need to be aligned at the same height. So I'm going to unlock this little clamp here on the inside and lift this up. And we want to go to the same letter here on this side as we have over here. So I'll clamp that back down, do that the same thing on the other side, and this will slot right through. Now with the assembly at the right height, we also need to lift open the bracket, and this may take a little bit of wiggling to get that through. So just understand if you get a little bit of resistance, that's why. And make sure to slot it all the way through, same thing on the other side. Now I push this in all the way because my home sewing machine is very small, and as you can see, it bottoms out against that back rail and doesn't come anywhere near that front rail. Now to lock it, you're going to lock these side clamps just like so, and that's going to lock it in place. But let's say you had a long arm or a really big home sewing machine, and when you pulled it forward, the front of the machine bumped up against that front rail. Well, to fix that, you simply unclamp both of those locks and pull this outward. And you want to make sure to lock it so that it's even. So if this is on the number 5 over here, you're also on the number 5 over here. Wherever it's best set up so that you can pull your machine forward and have nothing bump up against that front rail, that's where you want to lock it. So we have another new feature on the Cutie that really makes it excellent for home sewing machines, and that is this little bracket down here at the bottom. This is awesome, guys. So what does it do? I'm going to pull it all the way forward and I'm going to tighten it down. And you can see the back wheel bumps up against it. What this does is this stops my machine from going all the way back. So if I undo it and slide it away, my machine comes all the way back. My needle bar can crash against this back rail, can crash against this clamp, this back clamp, and it can make a bad noise. It can be a little scary. None of that is any fun, and none of it results in good quilting. So with this new bracket in place, if I pull it all the way as far forward as it can go with my machine where it is right now on the carriage, I am now limited. I can only stitch back to there, and my needle bar will not hit that back rail or that back rail clamp. So that is awesome. Make sure to set that in place. Now, if you find that your machine, like you need it to adjust forward, just shift your machine forward a little bit, release these clamps and nudge it forward if this bracket's not giving you quite as much of a limit as you need. So here is the frame put together and loaded up. And this is the reason why I said this machine would not be ideal for this frame, and that is simply the limited harp space. This is a 7-inch harp in this older Bernina, and you can see that translates to just barely being able to quilt that 4-inch wide space. So I've got daisy loops printed here, and that design, yeah, is 3.5 inches wide, and that's the maximum space really that you would be able to quilt in a single pass. And that's with this much bulk in the arm of the machine. As the quilt rolls up, that's going to reduce. You're going to have less and less space. So the machine that you use on this frame is something to consider. Definitely be thinking about that. And bigger is not always better. You want to pay attention to not just the size of the machine, but also the visibility. Having a really big bulky area here is going to block your view of the needle. So here is a home sewing machine that I can recommend for using on the Cutie. This is the Janome 1600, and you can see it has a much smaller front and a lot better visibility of the needle. It also has a 2-inch larger harp space, which doesn't sound like much, but on a frame like this, that can be the difference of being able to quilt an entire 6-inch block and not coming anywhere near close. So I can quilt a 6-inch quilt block on this machine on this frame. This machine is also compatible with our speed controller. This is a very simple device that just allows you to run the machine at a set, steady speed and be able to click it on and off right at the handlebar. It's also compatible with our Sure Stitch Elite. You can also add QCT to this frame and to this machine, so the range of abilities that you can have with this particular setup, I really think gives you the most flexibility. If you don't have a speed controller or a regulator or any other way of operating the machine, then you're going to need to use the foot pedal. And obviously a setup like this, where the machine is up high, won't work because otherwise you'd be standing on one foot trying to work the foot pedal. So think about that and consider the machine that you're using, how you plan to control the speed, and where you want to set it up. Of course, this frame is really, I think, best suited for the weekend warrior style quilter. You want to pull it out, load it up with a quilt, get your quilting in, quilt your entire quilt in a weekend, and then put it away. And the wonderful thing about the Cutie frame is it is exactly that portable, that collapsible, and perfectly designed for the home sewing machine style quilter. I love being able to pop this machine on this frame and take it off in less than a minute. It really does collapse very, very quickly. It allows me to pull the machine out whenever I want to use it and put it back. So I personally love that about the Cutie. Of all of the different hoop style frames that I have played with, you know, the Q-Zone hoop frame, the Evolution hoop frame, and the Cutie, this one is the easiest to put your machine in place and take it off. So if you're looking for something where you can just use it occasionally, not all the time, and not have it set up and take tons of room in your sewing space, this is definitely the frame for you. So if you'd like to learn more about the Cutie Quilting Frame that we assembled in the video today, come and check it out on my website, leahday.com/cutie. You can find the Cutie. You can also find the compatible accessories that we have for it. You can also add channel locks that will lock the machine so it only can roll forward and back or side to side. Super, super useful. You can also get bungees that helps to grip your quilt and give you some side tension on your quilt. Love that. And then also a light bar. If you are struggling with not having enough light over your Cutie, you can add that as well. So come and check out the Cutie Frame at leahday.com/cutie. Until next time, let's go quilt.